Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you doing today? It is Thursday afternoon, and that is a special day in the one rental at a time world. That's when you get the three amigos talking real estate. How you doing? We'll start with Dion.
Howdy, Mike. I'm doing great. I want to say thanks for the reaction video you did the other day. That was awesome.
Oh, you got it. And yeah, I enjoyed it. You are so creative. It's amazing how you put that together. It's good.
It's fun stuff.
You have a gift. So I enjoyed that a lot. And Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. My son, who's 3, is like, Daddy, that's the same guy.
I see him on the TV.
I'm like, you're so smart. You're such a smart kid.
Yeah,
I'm doing great, Mike.
Yeah. Daddy knows TV stars.
Yeah, yes, exactly. He knows us more than anybody else, I think.
There you go. There you go. Well, actually, the first topic of today is actually brought to us by Dion, right? Your concept of debt. Mm-hmm. And I just love how you kind of talked to yourself both in the present and in the past, and really how you had to get yourself over the fact that, you know what, in order to get out of an $89,000 hole, which you didn't know you were in, you had to take on more debt. And while you were going through this, I swear, I think I heard Dave Ramsey's brain explode. It was kind of crazy. So Dion, just in case nobody has seen it, why don't you kind of summarize what inspired you to do that? And then we're going to talk about how all of us approach debt.
Sure. And actually, it's funny, in the video that I have coming out today, I have a part where I say, someday I'm going to send my $1 million debt scream to Ramsey Solutions just to see if they'll play it. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think they will.
I don't think so.
So I had a very depressing conversation with my brother a couple of weeks ago. I have one who lives in California, and he's very successful according to traditional standards. He's a teacher, and he teaches ag mechanics, and his wife is an ag science teacher. So they're on the long path to, he said, if everything goes right, both of us will be able to retire sometime between 65 and 70.
Oh.
And he's already been a teacher for over 20 years.
Oh.
So he's got 20 plus years to go. So he says long path is 40 years to retirement. Yeah. So I never brought up finances because something I've learned with real estate is nobody can hear a word you say until they're ready, and he is not ready.
Amen to that.
So if he watches this, sorry.
Are you ready now?
If you're ready now. And one of the things that came up is I have a few rentals, and I have a brother who's got 10 paid off rentals, and I have mortgage debt. And the negative in the conversation was, well, I wouldn't want to invest because you have to take on all that debt. And I thought in my head, because I didn't want to say it out loud because it would have been a war, and we're brothers, we would have rolled on the ground. I really wish I had more debt. And so I wanted to make a video that explained to people how good debt with the right return, as the debt scales, the return scales. But my idea was, how do I convince somebody I've never met? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they like debt already. I know you guys have debt and love it, right? Mm-hmm. Love it. The right kind of debt. Mm-hmm. But 10 years ago, I hated debt.
Yeah.
Like it was the enemy. I was trying to give a house away and just didn't even want it. So I thought if I can convince me, then maybe my argument would make sense to people that I haven't met.
Yeah.
So that's where that video came from.
Yeah, it is so awesome. And in it, you approach it in such a great way. Cause again, you just paint the reason I like the three amigos talking is we just tell our story. It kind of is what it is. Right. And you were $89,000 in debt, consumer debt that you didn't know. Really the only chance, cause you were making, I think you said $17, it might've been $18. I mean, to get rid of $89,000 in debt when you're making $17 an hour, that's going to take like decades. I mean, because you still got to live, you still got to feed 3 kids. It just wouldn't have been possible, right?
I saw no way out of it the way people think.
Yeah.
People think I'm going to work and impress my boss and work my way up the ladder and make a little bit more money, and the raises are incremental. That wouldn't have mattered. I would still be in debt. And that's why I start the video. If I listened to Dave Ramsey, I would still have to work for a couple more decades instead of being able to not work a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was awesome. So Matt, I know you started as a 9th grade dropout, probably not educated on debt. I'm guessing, right? You were 14 when you stopped going to school.
No, I could barely spell that.
Does that have 4 letters or 3?
Yeah, 4. Is the B silent?
Yeah, that'd have been crazy. So,
yeah.
I mean, God, I can't imagine being 14 out on my own. I mean, did you even think about debt yet? I mean, how were you introduced to it, or what's going on?
I mean, I always liked working. I always liked having my own money. And so I think my first job where I was actually like, not chores around the house getting paid because my parents didn't do that.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, welcome to participating in our family.
Yes,
Like,
that's a family responsibility.
Yeah, freaking hell. All my friends get allowances. I get nothing.
What's the heck?
Except for, why is that not done? And so, so I got a job at like 11 and I loved it. I loved having my own paper out, my own money. And they're like, well, Matt, we've got some bad news. You're going to be sampling a new neighborhood. It's 120 houses in that development. And up here in the Northeast, they're not on top of each other in a lot of places. And so that was like a 3-mile bike ride.
Oh.
And so every single day it was 3 miles, 120 houses, stopping, throwing the paper, because you would sample the neighborhood for 3 weeks for free. And then the office would call you and say, here's how many customers you got. And that was the path. And so I started doing that at, like I said, about 11 years old. And I would get home from school. When I was 11, I would get home from school, I'd hop on my bike, and that was it. And so, yeah, the concept of debt was never really a thing to me. I thought it was like, if you didn't have it in your hand, you were cash.
Right.
Yeah. It was cash. That's the way it always is. And then I got acquainted with debt when I was 18 or 19, and was making a bunch of money, and I was actually saving at that point. But then being 19 years old, making good money, it was because that was my first software job. So 19, starting to make money. And then once I found debt in a house, I was like, holy cow, you can really lever that thing. And then and do not do this. This was horrible.
Do not do
this. If I were a company, Mike, I was insolvent for like 3 years. So do not do that. I would not do that again. I was single. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have both, I didn't have kids, but that was the whole thing for me is I was completely insolvent 100%. I mean, I had, this was running up to the crash. I had $200,000 in consumer debt.
Damn.
Yeah, between credit cards and a small HELOC and everything like leveraged to the gills.
So
hard.
Yeah, that's
and I drove a $3,000 car. Yeah, leveraged to the hilt. Don't do that. But that's why it was literally when people bailed on me during 2008, when the crash happened and people just stopped paying the rent because they lost their jobs. Yeah. I was literally going to work every single day in a 6-figure job just to pay my nut.
Yeah. And
like literally every month it was.
Did we make it?
Just like, begging the bank for more of a limit. Yeah. It was there were 3 times where I almost went bankrupt. It was not pretty.
Wow. Yeah. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. And then we all come around to the fact that, there is this thing called good debt.
That's right.
Because it's so embarrassing, right? I have an advanced degree, an MBA, right? Master's in business administration from a good university. And I do not remember ever talking about good debt or bad debt. I don't remember talking about consumer debt at all. We read balance sheets, we read income statement. You could obviously translate that to personal. But we never did that I remember. And I mean, I was that guy right in my 20s. I've been very clear. I wasn't quite to the bankruptcy, but I remember going into a car dealership. I think I made like 28 grand, maybe 29, and buying a $40,000 or $50,000 car. Don't do that. That's just dumb, just stupid. What are you doing, you idiot? Yeah, it's not good. And then you kind of flip the script, right? For me, it started at 30, and it was get rid of the consumer debt, lower your cost of living, sacrifice a little, get out of the rat race. That was the thing for me, is I wanted out of the rat race. Step 1. So that's where my focus was, and that's where I realized that debt could be a tool. And that's really what I put in Dion's, reaction video is debt's a tool, right? You can think of it as a gun, chainsaw, whatever you want to call it. If you don't know how to use that tool or that thing, it could either hurt you or kill you. But if you know how to use it, it could be very productive. Yeah. So I became very, very focused on how to use debt. And for me, I think we've talked about this a couple of times. The really important part wasn't the debt. It was recycling capital
Yes.
by using debt.
Mhm.
And that just exploded my world when I started using that same 10 grand over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Life got really easy really fast. So
For me, it was a lot on the credit score. So I just became an absolute credit score freak because everything that I was doing was based on my credit score. Like the first 3 times I got denied, they were like, yeah, your credit score is not high enough. I was like, what are you talking about? I've never had a late payment. I have all my accounts are in good standing. They're like,
they're
yeah,
right
your
up
debt
to the limit.
income. Well, yeah. So we'd gone to look at a car. So I'd gone to look at a car and the guy goes, slight issue. I was like, I love when they say slight issue. I was like, what's a slight issue? So your monthly nut is 16,000, but you your income is 7. I was like, does this mean I'm not going to get approved?
Not a problem. Oh my goodness. So Dion, how about for you? When you're standing there staring at $89,000 in debt, I mean, how'd you get over that hurdle? I mean, how'd you move forward?
The thing I really like about the Dave Ramsey groups is when they talk about your credit score, like Matt's, is I hear him say it all the time. You don't want a credit score because that just means you like debt. Like he's literally telling people not to worry about their credit score. But when I was looking at the $89,000 in bad debt, I was laid off from a police department, and with the recession going on, I was not sure if I was going to go back into law enforcement or back into driving, or ended up teaching at a driving school. Bankruptcy is not an option in law enforcement. It is an absolute career killer. If you show or have anything that looks like financial hardships, you're more likely to take a bribe or whatever the mentality is.
Yep.
Okay.
So that wasn't an option because I thought I might be going back into law enforcement. I'm not now. But looking at good debt was explained in a video that you guys did earlier this week, where I think, Mike, you were talking about the down payment on a house was a certain amount, $20,000 or $30,000. But the appreciation over the last 10 years has been over 80%.
Yeah.
Of the amount of the value of the house, not of the amount of the value of the down payment.
Exactly.
So that debt meant that you made over $200,000 from your $20,000 or $30,000 down payment. That's what's really been powerful for me. And anytime you bring up appreciation, most people that are afraid or uneducated about investing will say, right, but prices can go down too. And if you're investing for buy and hold real estate, that's not a bad thing.
No.
It means you get to buy things on sale. And like happened after 2008, rents go up when there's a housing crash because there's more renters, especially if we have the massive number of foreclosures that people thought were going to happen from the forbearance, which ended up not happening. That creates more renters. So to get past the idea of having so much debt that I couldn't handle it, was I needed to have income that made getting rid of the bad debt easier. And income came from cash flowing assets. First, it was house hacking, very powerful strategy, and not an option for everybody. But each cash flowing asset that was added, which took time, started to get faster and faster and faster together because saving for the down payment and closing costs and immediate repairs just gets easier over time. Yeah, because of more debt.
Yeah, the snowball, if you will. I think you have heard you refer to it before.
My video today, the income snowball.
Income snowball. Look for that on Dion Talk Financial News. Yeah, it is. I've never heard it referred to that. I've heard the debt snowball, obviously, which is what you're copying. It's a great idea. You're right. It just it becomes easier, and yeah. Again, I go back to the fact that debt's just a tool, and if I mean, my first real commission job, right? I was 13 or 14 years old selling Sears and Roebuck tools, right? Craftsman tools. And we had trainings on how to use routers and bandsaws and, stuff. Cause you could literally, cut your fingers off or worse, right? That's exactly what debt is. And if you don't know how to use debt, you probably should be scared of it. You should be apprehensive, but if you do your work, debt's amazing. So let's just do the math as you're referring to, right? Because this whole housing appreciation and housing can crash, that's a short-term phenomenon, in my opinion, right? Having done this for 20 years. So let's look at housing over a decade. The last decade, the median, we got to be careful, average median, the median home in the United States is up 80%. So let's just pick a number. Pick 200 grand. Let's assume you get into a 200 grand house for 10%. Shoot, let's assume you get in for 5%. That's a 10% down payment. Rewind the clock 10 years or push it forward 10 years, whatever you want to say. It's up 80%. That house is now worth 360 grand. You owe 190 plus debt pay down. Let's say you owe 180. That 10 grand is magically turned into $180,000. You have to live somewhere. Getting on the property ladder, what you guys have done in the course, house hacking, self-management. I'm so glad you guys put that in there, because I don't want to hear people. I mean, it's an option. It's not an option for everyone, but it's an option for more people than people realize. It should be every college graduate's goal to house hack within a year of graduating.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Have all your friends paying you rent, every single one of them.
Every time house hacking comes up and somebody says, I can't house hack because XYZ, when we're college students, we have roommates. When we're starting out, we share housing. Many can live without a lot when they have to.
Yeah.
Very few people can live without a lot when you don't have to.
Right. It's true.
Yeah, for me, the big thing is the rat race, and maybe we'll make this an impromptu video number 2, but I've interviewed I've talked to high school students, and this is a question I ask every time. How many of you can live on $2,000 a month?
Everybody.
Every one of them raises their hands. And then what I tell them is, you know what? Each of you are as close to getting out of the rat race that you will ever be. And that should be depressing, because you're going to go to school, get a bunch of college debt, get a job, blah, 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 blah. And soon you can't live on $2,000. You're going to live on $9,000 or $6,000. If you're willing to sacrifice, struggle, have roommates, you can house hack right out of high school and probably be financially free by 25.
2009, I bought a place for $155. It's a duplex. We house hacked. I lived on one side, fixed it up, moved over to the other side, got that side rented, lived on the other side, fixed that up while I lived in it. It took about a year. We paid $155 for that house. That house just appraised for $405. And my monthly rent, and I now owe $127,000 on that house. And it produces a little over $4,000 a month of income with both sides rented.
Oh, that's terrible.
So if I just hated it and I wanted to sell it, I would make $270,000 and then be giving up a $4,000 a month income stream. And I think my taxes, insurance, all in, I think it's like 1,600, 1,700, right around there. So, it makes it literally prints a $2,400 a month check for me, after expenses. But house hacking sucks.
A lot of people say anybody who bought a house 20 years ago seems like a genius. Well, eventually it's going to be 20 years from now.
Of course.
Exactly.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In the end, guys, debt is a tool. We all use it. And I think I said this in the review. I would gladly accept 10 or even 100x the amount of debt I have. Assuming all my ratios still played out, I would welcome it. I would welcome 100 times my debt level today. I would welcome it. So how about you, Matt? Would you take more?
Yeah. In fact, Mike, tomorrow I hear on a refinance of 8 properties.
Nice.
And to see exactly how much more I can lever all 8 of those properties, because all the appraisals come in. And the question is, to your point, how much can I get the bank to give me?
Exactly. And Dion, how about you?
Well, it's tax-free. As long as the return scaled, that's like you said, if your ratios were the same.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that there's a limit to how much debt I would want.
Yeah. For you, the only limit would be how many you could self-manage, right? That would be the gating factor for you, right? At some point you could, in theory, you would have to add property management at some number.
You can get to at least 70-ish.
Do it yourself. Matt proves it can happen. All right, guys. So Dion, how can people find you?
Right here on YouTube, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. I'm really active in the Bigger Pockets forums and in the Bigger Pockets Facebook groups. If you have any questions, reach out.
And somebody told me there's a Bigger Pockets boot camp coming up, which you are the starring member of.
Ashley Kerr is the starring member, of course.
You're my star, though.
I'm going to be one of the teaching assistants, trying to give as much one-on-one help to the people who take that course as possible.
Very cool. And Matt, where can people find you?
lumberjacklandlord.com, lumberjack landlord on YouTube, and with you fine fellas on a Thursday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern time.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.